Hi there, welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that when we think about how we want to be remembered, it helps us see differently the opportunity we have in remembering our loved ones. How are you? I always love this season of time, summertime. I love it so much because people travel and go to really cool places. And I wonder where you're traveling or where you're cleaning up from having traveled. Last weekend, we just took a one-nighter and headed up into the hills. And it was so worth it. We just let the boys sleep in hammocks and we slept in the back of our expedition. And it was so easy and simple, but also dreamy just to really corral all of us together and to be together in nature. So whatever your summer plans are and whatever you're doing, I am really grateful that you are also listening to the Mindset Check podcast. Just a little reminder about the Facebook group, Mindset Check. It's such a great place where we get to connect and build community around the podcast and where I can share with you things that I can't always share with you through the podcast because maybe they're visual or maybe they're things that I can't share on here. Anyway, it's just such a cool place. So if you haven't joined yet, pop over to Facebook, type in Mindset Check Podcast and look us up. We would love to have you there. Okay, so for those of you that are new in the first season of the Mindset Check Podcast, we are reading through my journal from when I was 15 and pregnant. And this is a time of my life where I tackled a few tough years of being pregnant and, navigating a really rocky relationship and then losing my little girl. And so right now you're dropping in, I think maybe 4 or 5 entries. We've kind of been going through some grief. And just so you know, we're not going to stay there. We're not staying there for the whole podcast or anything like that, but grief comes up unexpectedly, right? It comes up in our life and we got to move through it. So that's what we're doing right now. And what I think is interesting is the way that we move through things in our life is the way that we just move through life. So listening and learning about grief, regardless if it completely applies to the season that you're in, trust me, you'll still come away with some amazing life lessons. In this episode, there's no new characters that are not introduced or given the context of who they are. So let's just jump right in. March 27th, 1995. Man, what else could go wrong? Tomorrow we have court. We're getting sued by Willie's car lot. The state wants to take away our license plates and registration because of Jesse's tickets. Jesse has another baby, supposedly. Ooh. And Janie wants him to sign his rights away. But yet 2 years ago, he took a blood test and heard nothing, and even asked the state about it. They said not to worry. And in this whole situation, nothing's been fair because what do you do? What can you do? A little boy, Carter Baldwin, 2 years old, has no idea and probably never will that Jesse is his dad. And in the side margin, I wrote her name, her phone number, her address. And obviously I've changed her name to protect all the people involved. Ooh. Taylor's birthday is Friday, and on Saturday we're having a picnic and celebrating. It will be hard, but we'll make it through. I miss her. March 31st, 1995. Taylor, I have so much to say. Baby, I miss you. You're so dang special. Please let me tell you about my day. After snowing last week and slowly getting warm, Today was the nicest day. Warm, pretty, green, clear blue sky. Perfect. I enjoyed it. Later in the day, we all sat down. Grandma and Grandpa Cox, Aunt Shelley and April, cousins Anthony and Nicole, and your dad and I. First, Grandma gave us a present. It was what she was planning to put on your cake a long time ago. A little kitten holding a cake with one candle, a keepsake. We're planning on putting it on your cake tomorrow. Honey, we're having a family party tomorrow and we'd like you to join. Then Grandpa gave your dad and I gifts. From Taylor to Mom was the CD, Diana Ross, with our song on it. From Taylor to Dad was a fishing license and a fishing pole for 1 year, so they could have long talks and stuff like that. Then we listened to our song and everyone cried. Taylor, we're so lucky to have all of our family. Everyone is so thoughtful and helpful. Taylor, we are so very lucky to have you, and I love the Lord so much for giving us the chance to be together again. Baby, we have to work on your dad. Help me, please. I can't believe it has been a whole year since your birth. The best year of my life, even though we went through some of the toughest times. It was the best chance to be with you here on earth. Honey, I promise we will have many more wonderful years together. I now am starting to feel privileged because I get to raise you in the perfect place. Honey, quote, we'll hold on together, quote. I love you, Mom. Oh, okay. There's so many things to dive in, and I want to dive in where my heart is, but I feel like we should start and like go back to this whole thing, like Jesse having another baby, and kind of start there. I guess because I'd rather address it and then move on to the other things that are in my heart. So yes, out of the blue, I find out that he has another baby. He never told me anything about this, and it just came up. It just came up. And all of the stuff, you know, that he said on his side, that he asked the state about it, and they said not to worry, and that he took a blood test and heard nothing. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, he probably did take the blood test. Hearing nothing, I'm not sure about that. I'm just not sure. How can I be sure? You know this story. We can't be sure whether or not those things were true, or whether or not he was just telling me those things to kind of pad the situation. And obviously, we're going through a lot, and we're about to celebrate the birthday of our baby girl who's just passed, and then all of this news. I can remember just feeling the need to just document it, to just record it. I wrote her name in the margins, you know, her address, her phone number, the whole thing. For whatever reason, my heart just felt compassion, and I felt there's this little boy out there who has no idea who his dad is. And here he is living another existence. And I remember it allowing my mind to wander and feel like, oh my gosh, does he have more? Oh my gosh, you know? I guess that's the way that I handled it. I just recorded it. For me, that was, I kind of felt like at this point that I had been gathering information. It's really important to kind of note that. And I've probably already said that, you know, that that my dad counseled me in my journal to just start recording, to write down, how I feel. And you'll see in a few more episodes, he really counsels me in that direction. But yeah, I think that's what I felt called to do in that space. And now, after knowing the whole story, it really isn't like hugely surprising. But it is what it is. It is what it is. And so let's move on. You want to move on? I want to move on. I love the birthday plans, and I have a lot of things to talk to you about inside of all of this that happened. The one thing that was really a little bit like really touching, just barely as I read it, was, my parents gave us these gifts to us from Taylor. Such a healing thing to do, to think of what would be meaningful that could come from her at this point. And how can I help that to make an impact? And you probably heard me when I was reading. I stumbled just a little bit when I was reading, from Taylor to Dad was this fishing license and a pole, for a year so that they could just have long talks. And that just touched my heart, my soul, just because, thinking of my parents and them thinking of our therapy and what we needed. I wish Jesse would have been into that. I wish he would have taken, all the fishing trips for a year, all of the days just to be alone with himself and to try to find her and to talk to her. He had a lot on his plate, and I'll just leave that right there. We'll come back around to all of that. He had a lot that he was not dealing with and not handling. And that would have been just perfect. I think that we have to talk ourselves into handling our own stuff. We need to do an entire episode on that and processing and all of those things. And I'll take note of that and keep that for the future. The gift that was from my parents to me was the CD Diana Ross, and it just has the song on it, If We Hold On Together, which is why I closed it with, honey, quote, we'll hold on together. That's why I closed the journal entry that way, because that was Taylor's song. That was a song that I sang to her when I was pregnant with her. And the words are so beautiful, because as a mom singing them to her, it's literally amazing. But then after she passed, it's like that song is her singing those words to me. And each of my kids, have their own song, and my kids all know Taylor's song. And my oldest plays it on the piano often for me, It's so sweet. So the words are like this. Don't lose your way with each passing day. You've come so far, don't throw it away. Live believing. Oh. Live believing. Dreams are for weaving. Wonders are waiting to start. Live your story. Faith, hope, and glory. Hold to the truth in your heart. If we hold on together, I know our dreams will never die. Dreams will see us through to forever, where clouds roll by. For you and I, souls in the wind, must learn how to bend. Seek out a star, hold on to the end. Valley, mountain, there is a fountain. Washes our tears all away. Words are swaying, someone is praying. Please, let us come home to stay. If we hold on together, I know our dreams will never die. Dreams see us through to forever, where clouds roll by for you and I. When we're out there in the dark, we'll dream about the sun. In the dark, we'll feel the light. Warm our hearts, everyone. And then the chorus again. It's literally like, I can't believe like how fitting. And that's how things work, right? That's how life is. It's just so beautiful. So, I like to think of however that song came to be in my mind as the song that I wanted to be her song that became, our song together, and her sort of singing to me and cheering me through life and through the dark, It's amazing. So I feel like it's incredible to really talk about the ins and the outs of us deciding to celebrate and the way that we went about our grief. Because, as I've mentioned with my interview, in my interview with Loren, my dad had said, "Hey, Mish, I have an idea. What do you think about not marking Death Day on the calendar and just allowing ourselves to feel however we feel on that day?" Because so many people will mark Death Day on the calendar as a day that they're supposed to feel bad, or a day that they're supposed to feel something. And then maybe you really do feel bad that first year, the second year, however many, but you feel like you're supposed to feel bad on the other days. And he said, what if we make it a tradition that what we really want to celebrate is her birthday? What if we invite her into our life to be active in our life, to keep our side of the relationship open, and to honor them, and to, do things that help us to feel close to them on that day specifically. And then allowing us to feel however we feel on any day, including her birthday, the death day, whatever day. What about that? And we talked all about doing whatever is truly authentic to our grief. And, that conversation, being so close to even when she passed, having the permission to feel however I needed to feel on any day, was incredible. And after talking to people who have gone through grief, and they didn't do that, they didn't know that, right? A lot of times I've talked to people who have slipped into obligatory grief. The kind of grief that you feel obligated to do. So the first example would be, I'm supposed to feel sad on the death day. And some people even believe, maybe they're supposed to feel bad on the birthday. Or even creating traditions that we're obligated to. Like you're obligated to go to her grave, or you're obligated to whatever, right? Fill in the blank. Maybe you're obligated to celebrate like in a certain traditional way. And I think that's a very interesting thing to take apart and to really, really just look at with whatever grief that you have ever experienced in your life. Is there ever a point where your grief has become obligatory? Because if it's obligatory, then it's not authentic to your grief. It's not authentic to what you're feeling. And if you're not authentic to how you're feeling, then we know that we can't process the things that we're feeling, right? What we're actually going through. And so I loved that my dad created a space where we were, consciously going to celebrate her on her birthday. And I loved that. For me, that resonated with my soul. And I was so on board with celebrating her life. And for crying out loud, it's still her birthday, right? And yeah, you have a choice to be sad for a sense of like loss that of all the ages and milestones that they never reached, or, you know, and sometimes that just comes up. Sometimes that's just part of it all anyway. You're going to feel it anyway. But again, going back to being authentic, and that's okay if you're feeling that. And so what we ended up doing on her birthday, her very first birthday, you know, we have this big, you know, picnic sort of barbecue at our house, and we invited everyone. We invited everyone that was in our family, you know, that was close to us. And then we did this little thing at home where we wrote on balloons. So we blew up balloons really, really big, and we wrote our messages all over these balloons of just messages to her, things that we were feeling, things that we wanted her to know. And then we all went up to her grave together and we released the balloons. And it was amazing. It was amazing because we were, you know, allowed to be with each other and to grieve together, and we were commemorating something and recognizing her in our life. And then ever since that first birthday, I always celebrate her birthday, but sometimes, honestly, it's like, hey, you know, it's been a crazy busy day and it's like 8:00 at night. Get in the car. Let's go get ice cream. Gosh, it's Taylor's birthday, you know? And even if we are recognizing it at the beginning of the day and then that's what comes, that's fine. Some days, some years, it's like, let's celebrate and have a huge party. Let's do that. Sometimes I go out in nature by myself. I just go pick up some yummy dessert and a candle and head out in nature by myself. And sometimes even like for my dad, you know, because he had favorite foods and favorite music and favorite things, like I'll try to do a lot of his favorite things on his birthday, right? So depending on the age of your person, you know, one year I just ate rice for Taylor's birthday because she loved rice. She was tiny, right? And so I think it's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity on that day to do something that helps you feel connected with them or to honor them. My cousin, they created this thing where their dad just loved tacos. And so they just invite everyone, wherever they are, to eat tacos that night. Like, and will you send us a picture of you eating tacos? Because that's just, it means something to them because it was his favorite. So I love that. You can create traditions of things that you can do. You can do something different every single year. Some things that I've heard of recently that I love is if you're grieving for your baby, buy a baby gift and take it to the hospital and ask them to give it to the first baby born on that day. How cool, right? Or I love this too. Verbalize to someone else that it's their birthday and share how old they would have been. P.S. If you've lost a little one, and when people ask you how old they are and you have to like kind of do the math in your mind once again, you are normal. I just want you to know. Because for so long I kind of like felt like, oh, I should just know that like so much quicker, you know. And then I read this book, The Poisonwood Bible. And in the Poisonwood Bible, it talks about an experience where somebody asks, it's such a good book. It's a good read, by the way. But the experience is just that somebody asks her about her child that passed away. And she said, and I started to count in my mind for, you know, I don't know how many times I had recounted over and over the age of this child. And it was in that moment that I was like, wait, so other moms do that too? You know, sometimes we just need permission. Permission to feel how we need to feel. Permission to celebrate who they are in whatever way. A lot of times we'll watch the video that we played at her funeral on her birthday, or we'll look back. I've made other videos with just photos. It's just a time to connect. Go plant something, go volunteer in their name somewhere. Send a card or a note to someone that's also grieving them, that connects the two of you. Share memories, share stories. Things that are healing. Things that are healing. I love this quote by James O'Barr that says, "If the people we love are stolen from us, the way to have them live on is to never stop loving them." So drop into the ways that you can love them, that you can honor them, that you can feel them. One sort of example that I wanted to bring up for you about obligatory grief, because I feel like that's just super important to kind of like unpack and take apart, and to make sure that that you can figure it out, right? You can move past that sort of guilt that sometimes is what drives obligatory grief. So I want to tell you a story about another C.S. Lewis reference. And if you can't tell at this point, I'm a lover of C.S. Lewis. There's a book called The Great Divorce. And in this book, there's a place where the people from Earth, after they die, they kind of visit a suburb of heaven. And the purpose is to try to get over the things that kind of are getting in the way for them of progressing, and to try to let those things go. So there's this woman that shows up, and she's met by her brother, who's kind of like her coach, right? Her guide. And she ends up having these conversations with him about her son. And on Earth, after her son had passed away at a young age, she kind of did this Egyptian like balming to his memory, to his room, to, everybody had to sort of tiptoe around his things and keep them exactly perfectly so. They had to keep anniversaries and memories in a way that just like kind of kept their family stuck. And it was like the mom kind of like defending her son all the time, right? Like, no, we love him, and comparing everything to like this child that she had lost. And she was pouring all of her focus. And then the coach actually brings up for her that you were doing that because you felt so guilty that you didn't love him enough when he was on Earth. Ouch. Ouch. And I think it's important to take a look at the reason why we're holding on to grief that we feel is obligatory. Sometimes it is simply because we've been taught that that's what we should do. And you can do it however you want. It's like so freeing. But sometimes our regret or our guilt gets in the way of those things. And I think when we are able to really get focused, like laser focused on what that is, it's extremely valuable because it gives us an opportunity to understand it and learn how to forgive ourselves. So if you're willing to just look at it, you can forgive yourself. If you're willing to look at it, you can move past it. And so if there's anything that you have that's regret around grief, like let's take, for example, this mom, we're just going to stick with that example in the book, The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. If she were able to just accept that maybe there were some ways of acting when she was, with him on Earth that she wished she would have done differently. Maybe she could have then turned it around and set it free so that she could truly just love him in a new space. Unresolved regrets really bring these negative impacts into our life. So the solution isn't just to close our eyes tightly and pretend that it's not there, right? It's to accept and work towards forgiving ourselves and growing from our mistakes. Our mistakes are there to be guideposts for us to grow and to move forward. That's what mistakes are for in life. As long as we grow and we move forward, then the mistakes had a purpose. So if she didn't love him enough, what she really could do is write down, what it was specifically that she regrets. And she could even number all of those regrets if they were more than just one. And then on another sheet of paper, she could write down the lessons that she learned from those regrets. So here's where expansion comes, right? Because she could say, dang it, I wish I would have loved him while he was here with me. And instead of focusing all of her family's efforts on, making sure they honored him properly in life, maybe she could just love them. So the lesson could be, I'm going to love my kids, all of them. And I'm even going to love my boy who passed, even though he's not here with me. And in that way, she can tear up the first paper with all of her regrets on it and just live with the lessons that she learned. So think about that in your life. If you were going to write down things that you regret, and then on the other side or on a different piece of paper, writing down the lessons you've learned from it, it allows you to set your regret free. So my dad always had this quote of saying, I had no regrets. I had no regrets in life. And I think that can be like a super Pollyanna way of looking at life, but it's also really, really shallow if you don't look at them with depth. So if you just go through life and say, no regrets, right? No, we have no regrets because we learn from them and we appreciate the lessons that we learned from them so that we become a bigger and better person. And so when you say, I'm living my life with no regrets, instead of living it as a shallow person who's not in touch with the things that they did that were not good or not right, because the truth is that's just life. There's a quote in this story from C.S. Lewis that I'm telling you about that says this exact thing. It says, we've all been wrong. That's the great joke. There's no need to go on pretending one was right. After that, we begin living. So just accepting that we were wrong helps us to live better. And that is the whole metaphor of what I'm trying to illustrate. That when we sign up to say we want to live a life with no regrets, it's because we learned from the things that we did regret. And we're sitting in what we've learned versus reminiscing and staying in the regret. Or just disregarding it altogether and not seeing any of it. Let's be the people who sign up to learn. Let's be the people with eyes wide open, who don't just wish our regrets away, but that we can grow from those regrets. We can grow from our guilt. We can grow from our mistakes. And in that way, we make the most of our regrets, right? I love this quote by Henry David Thoreau. He said, "Make the most of your regrets. Never smother your sorrow, but tend and cherish it till it comes to have a separate and integral interest. To regret deeply is to live afresh." To live afresh, to live new, because we're learning from them and we're making the most of them. It's so good. And so inside of that, let your relationships with the people that maybe you've lost, that you have regret about, propel you in figuring out regrets, in figuring out how to resolve them and what to learn from them. They can still be such an active influence when you ask yourself, what would they say right now? What would they say to that feeling I'm having? This other quote by Leo Buscaglia says, "I know for certain that we never lose the people we love, even to death. They continue to participate in every act, thought, and decision we make. their love leaves an indelible imprint on our memories. So good, right? So that love being a mark that we can't erase helps guide us, helps show us what we need to see. And I think a big part of like making peace with people who have passed, because this is something that's actually really, really super common. People having to like handle their own regret with the way that they acted, and or sadness with the way that the person who passed acted, maybe how things were left. We've kind of addressed that a little bit. But I think it's important to remember as we're thinking about the imprint that they make on us and our memories, and to really think about how they would want to be remembered and what they would want us to focus on. I think that we can really answer that question when we first dive into how would we want to be remembered. Because it puts us in the place of, now I can look past maybe some of the, or I hope people can look past some of my faults or some of the ways that I show up that I wish I didn't. It allows us to also take a hardcore look at our life that says, how I want to be remembered, is that how I'm showing up? And can I allow the grace of me wanting to be remembered that way in remembering the person in my life who passed? Can I remember them with that same grace that I wish people would give me? So I think it's a really cool question to ponder. How do you want to be remembered? Like if you were to pass tomorrow, how do you hope people remember you? Maybe as calm, as kind, generous, as a loving soul. Maybe you want to be remembered as someone who made a difference, or someone who was just an absolute joy to be around. I thought about it for myself, and I thought, I want to be known as the girl who helped others feel love in their life. I want to be remembered as a person that helps others unlock the padlocks that are in their hearts. I want to be a person who motivates and inspires others and helps them to step into their power. And so again, once you figure out how you want to be remembered, what things are inspiring to you, it allows you to consider all the roles that you play in your life and where you want to show up more, how you can act today to be remembered like that tomorrow. That's a huge part of just healing and being able to be aware of our own self, discovering ourselves on this journey of life. And then remember that to be remembered that way will allow a certain amount of grace. It will require a certain amount of grace from other people. And can you give that same grace to someone in your life who's not with you currently, who's not here to stand up for themselves? Right? And also remember that the way we remember them allows us to become something even bigger and better than we are. Because what we focus on grows. And so if we focus on the great traits of others, those traits can be examples for us, like guiding north stars for us to live our lives with that same impression upon us. It's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful. And I think that this helps us to also see the lives of our loved ones as completed. Sometimes it's really difficult to not see their lives as just interrupted, right? Especially when someone dies young. It's really difficult to not see their lives as just like interrupted, like as not the plan. And when we decide to look at them the way that they maybe would want to be remembered, it helps us to see their life as completed. And it changes our perspective. I hope that it brings you power in your remembering, in the ways that you choose to remember your people, in knowing that you can set free any form of obligatory grief, any guilt, any regret that you're holding on to, knowing that they are still active participants in our life and that we get to choose what we want to focus on. We can focus on their heart and the goodness of their heart. And I hope that through that you see that you have more power than you think you do in the ways that you remember your people. And now I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you and really recognize you for just leaving a review on my podcast. For everybody who has done that, please know it has warmed my heart with the kind words that you've written. And it just means so much that you have taken that extra tiny little step to just, kind of give back and help this podcast grow. It's such an incredible way. And it's crazy that they base so much off of reviews, but here we are. And also it helps me to hear from you. So I actually really love it. I also wanted to just give a little shout out to a local listener. Her name is Lynette. She texted me some personal things that really felt so, she was really recognizing me for standing in my truth and in what I believe. And she let me know that they lost their first grandchild in December. And she writes, "I've thought so much about you losing Taylor. You sharing your experiences and thoughts have brought me a lot of comfort. You are making a difference. Thank you for sharing. I miss you." And I just really loved that message and just wanted to say, of course, Lynette, of course, I'm so grateful to know back that these messages are helping you too. And I really do hope from the bottom of my heart that you find peace many of your days when reflecting and thinking and spending time with your grandchild. And in closing, I would love to just say thank you again for letting me walk on this road with you. And I'll leave you with this quote from Thomas Campbell that says, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." Until next time, my friend.